hopefully over the next 90 minutes, we'll have a really interesting discussion. And actually, I mean, I've been involved in, training and skills, young adult education for over a quarter of a century, and actually things just seem to be moving faster and faster, dynamic change. Even just in the last few months, I've seen some really jaw-dropping things. I hear a lot from employers that it's getting harder to engender what somebody described as a sense of long-termness amongst young adults. We're seeing more job hopping, reneges on accepted job offers, young adults with side hustles that they're working alongside their major jobs. Seems that young adults perhaps have a deeper sense of kind of distrust of authority in institutions such as organizations, such as even parents, kind of media. Obviously, millennials and Gen Zers that we're often now recruiting haven't seen this kind of economic situation before in terms of levels of inflation, levels of interest rate that some of us who are older might just about remember from decades ago. But you can imagine that's not been the case throughout the lifetimes of a lot of our young adults these days. I'm hearing stories of graduates routinely having counselling at universities to support them with stress, and therefore what are they expecting when they're coming into the workplace? You're probably aware, I'm sure, that YouTube a few years ago overtook Google as a search engine, and so I'm sure a lot of us have YouTube accounts these days. But are you aware that for Gen Z, as TikTok has actually now overtaken Google as a search engine? So how many of us had corporate TikTok accounts? I heard recently, a few weeks ago, that around 50% of young adult candidates don't have CVs these days. So actually, are we creating barriers by still asking for CVs? I was quite excited, actually, but I didn't know. I mean, I live and breathe this stuff. I was unaware that UCAS, the increasingly badly named University and Colleges Admission Service, actually now carries apprenticeship opportunities, and they're actually revamping their website to show apprenticeship opportunities with parity to degree opportunities. I wasn't aware of that. So there's an awful lot of change going on at the moment, part of which we're going to discuss this morning. We are going to have a series of webinars over the next few months, but without further ado, I've got a brilliant range of speakers to give us some tips and insights over the next 90 minutes. So to start with, can I introduce Lorraine to start us off with a few thoughts from some research she's been involved in recently? Lorraine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Gareth. Great to be here today. So my name is Lorraine Twist, and I lead the professional services business at Hays across the UK. The main area in this business is accounting firms, and I've personally worked and recruited within this field for the whole of my career, which is now too many years to talk about, but nevertheless, we recruit from entry level to partner level, and today what I'd like to do is just to share some insights, to share some thoughts, but also some facts and figures which may resonate and start a conversation. So if without further ado, I'm going to attempt to share my very brief slide deck, and then we can move on. Right, okay. Can we see this? Yeah, great. Just let me oh, hang on, just one moment here we go. There we go. Okay, so I think the reality is that we don't 100% know the mindsets of young adults, but what I'm hoping to do today is to discuss what we see day to day in our role, but also to have some facts and figures behind that, to have a real think about that. But I would say from our perspective, it's about working to live, not living to work. I think this community is still very motivated by hard work and doing a good job, but they do absolutely demand balance. I think they value free time over financial rewards, which was certainly very different from when I was personally, building my career. I think they have a less structured approach to working hours. It doesn't mean they don't want to put the hours in, but it's not quite in the linear fashion that certainly I'm used to. I think the majority, not all, but are looking for a hybrid working environment. We used to think that, there was a time after COVID that a lot of individuals wanted 100% remote. We don't think that's the case anymore. I think that combination of being in the office and building a culture versus the flexibility of home working is what resonates with young adults. I think they are responsible, though, from a social conscious perspective. They really care about sustainability and global warming on the whole, and really feel that they are the generation that's going to make a fundamental difference. I think on a whole, they're more open, they're focused on positive mental health and well-being, and that comes first. They're also incredibly brand focused. And obviously we're talking about this now, but a future employer must have an EVP, and a corporate image which aligns with their values. Now, an EVP sounds very grand, doesn't it? But actually, it's just what makes you special, what makes you stand out, and why should they work for you? Now, here's some facts and figures which was taken from our latest salary guide, which launched at the end of this year, about factors young adults consider important when assessing a new role. And 73% say an organisation's commitment to sustainability is one of the most important things. And I think when we think about sustainability, there might be some people here that are working for very large firms and organisations and are on that journey. Others may just be starting that journey, but it's just really simple things like, having, no plastics in the office, single-use plastics in the office. It could be, looking at the sustainability of your supply chain. It could be, there's lots of really avenues now in which you can carbon offsets, and plant trees, which is also a great team working exercises. There's places which you can start regardless of the size of your business to really start that sustainability journey. An organisation's purpose, 80% believe that must resonate with them to join the firm, and I think that again is very, very interesting. And from a purpose perspective, obviously you've got that sustainability element, but you've also really got that serving the community. What are you doing to serve your community? Is the world a better place because your firm or organisation is a part of it? But again, it can be very grand, but it can be really simple things like, at Christmas, working with a local food bank, having a local charity, which you work with. And you find that most firms and organisations do that. Maybe they just don't articulate. And I think 72% also say that ability to really show inclusivity is very important. So DE&I, as a generation, incredibly inclusive, incredibly open, and they want to work for somewhere that just welcomes all and has that equity. So those are the three key facts which stood out. That flexible approach to hybrid working is a differentiator. 61% of young adults would change jobs for more flexibility. Now, I think this is a very important fact, but nevertheless, it needs to be offsetted against also training and development. The trend that we've seen, certainly when individuals are entry level, they're coming to a firm, they're on their training contract. Initially, we have found that, having more time in the office, learning on the job as well as online training is absolutely key. But when individuals are up and running a little bit more, that flexibility is key. However, what we are finding now also is that generally anchor days are very popular, and if someone's going to come in the office 2 or 3 times a week, they will do it with colleagues. So you have that collaboration. So when you go into the office, it is about collaboration, it is about culture building, and that's really important. Now, Gareth mentioned also at the start how we've seen, there's been, I've never in my career seen actually across the board so many individuals flaking out of jobs, making a commitment and then then, you know, not starting the opportunity, which has been very difficult for all. But I think part of that is also a hangover from COVID, where many individuals are working 100% remotely or had a 100% remote recruitment process, and again didn't get that culture feel and didn't really buy into to the firm or organisation they were going to join. And just really quickly, if you're not sure where to start from an employer value proposition, just some quick pillars. Again, some people on this call might be incredibly advanced on their journey, others might just want a starting point. Again, we find that most of our clients do have this, but they just don't put it together in, you know, in one place. So you know, of course, young adults still want to know your business is successful and really keen to hear about that and what has happened. But also, you know, that hybrid working and flexibility is important. You know, that culture and well-being and what you do there, purpose and sustainability, and DE&I. And, you know, even just starting with a really simple document that had all that information, I think would make a makes a massive difference. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and we can continue the conversation.
Brilliant, thanks, Lorraine. Excellent start for us there. Can I come to Maisie, actually? Maisie, if you want to introduce yourself, I know you've been doing some work looking at these sorts of themes as well. And, you know, how does what Lorraine has said resonate with you? And is there anything else you've seen?
Yeah, morning everyone. My name is Maisie Poskett and I'm the head of Amazing at BHP. What that means is I'm in charge of induction and training and development from all our staff, whether that is a school leaver first starting their journey and promoting them up through the ranks, or if you've got someone coming in at director level, and how do we get them up to partner? So I work very closely across all of our departments, making sure we can get the best out of our teams. So what Lorraine says really does resonate. And to be fair, that first slide, Lorraine, I could have added so many other things which are benefits. I think in this day and age, there are so many different workplace benefits that we are seeing coming to the table. Yeah. Are there doggy days in the office? Is there a keg for a Friday? Like even little things like that, they can just be that selling point to that one individual who that's what they're looking for. And I feel that we're getting so diluted in all of the different things that we could expect out of a workplace, that having a purpose which kind of encompasses many of the things that we're offering is more important than ever. So you can kind of sell yourself in one line rather than having to list off reams and reams of stuff. If you think, say, 20 years ago, what were you looking at when you were looking for a job? So salary, what would you be doing, other benefits? But those benefits might be healthcare, like private and holiday days. But now we're seeing so much more on offer. And I think flexibility has actually been a really great springboard into the future as to where we can see employment opportunities going. I think the anchor days, like as you mentioned, Lorraine, is really interesting because I've seen it work where Tuesdays and Thursdays you have to be in the office, but then some people are like, that's still not flexible enough, that's not going to work for me. I'll be in 2 days, but it might be Monday and Wednesday one week, next week it'll be Thursday and Friday. What we use is a desk booking system, so teams can discuss amongst themselves, right, what days are we coming in together, and then they can book where they're going to sit together, and that's worked really, really well for us.
I think just that point on anchor days, I think just to expand on that, I think anchor days enforced by a firm is never as powerful as anchor days which is enforced by the employees, because they want to be together. I think that's the key, isn't it? If it's enforced, it's not flexible. They want to come into the office because it's appealing, it's interesting, and it gives them that collaboration. So yeah, I totally agree. And desk booking is a really good, efficient way to do it because it helps with office space also, doesn't it? So
yeah,
somebody used the word actually about this idea of don't just have people coming into the office for the sake of it and they're going to be in the office sitting on the Zoom calls all day. That's just pointless. They talked about intentionality of get people into the office for a good reason, you know, a team meeting or some social bonding, perhaps give them a reason to come in, like a pizza lunch or whatever that gets brought in to give them that incentive to come in, because I'm definitely hearing in the last few weeks that sort of hybrid pendulum is actually swinging back from being in the office maybe only 1 day a week. A lot of young adults want to be in the office more like 3 or 4 days a week. But actually often they're then not able to, the senior staff that they want to be with and be coached by and be mentored by actually aren't in as often. So perhaps that idea of intentionality. Zoe, can I actually get your thoughts on this? Zoe Wells.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree with both Lorraine and Maisie. The importance of like work-life balance is more important than ever. They've been obviously brought up in a world where technology is at like their fingertips, compared to the previous young people where it's kind of something that came in halfway through. So then therefore their ability to compare all of the companies' benefits is more important than, say, salary. Even like I've noticed a change. There was a slide that I've been presenting because my role, because I work within the early careers team, I deliver skill sessions such as like CV workshop, mock interviews. And there's a slide where we talk about the average salaries of a ICAW chartered accountant. And before, that was kind of like the ear-pricking moment for a lot of students, whereas I've even had students now say to me that that's not important to me or as high up on the agenda for me. It's more of those other non-traditional benefits, such as what everyone was saying, a doggy day, or I don't know, pet insurance, or whatever the whatever little benefits that they're looking for now. But yeah, I absolutely agree with both of you.
Thanks, Zoe. And actually, I mean, I attended a presentation by a recruiter about 6 months ago who said, right, these are the things you must have in your EVP, and they put up a slide with 52 things on it, right down to things like shower facilities, which I hadn't even thought of from an employer's perspective. And I don't think that 52 even included doggy days or kegs. So I think how important it is that we tailor the offering to individual employees like that. What do you think, Maisie?
I think it's more important than ever. Everyone is an individual, and I think how we're moving forward with how people are viewing their sexuality and their gender identity is showing more than ever how individual everybody is themselves, and that is now coming through in the benefits they're looking for as well. It's an interesting point though, because I could speak to like 10 or 20 of our Gen Zs that we've got in the workplace and say to them like, what's important to you? And they might say doggy days, or they might want flexibility, or it might be salary, or it might be what we're doing for the environment. And then I'll say to them, what about job security? And they're like, oh yeah, that's really important. And I think that underlyingly, they do want similar things to what the previous generations want. It's just because there's now so much on the table that they're looking at, the lines are blurred between what is actually the most important thing, when job security, considering post-pandemic, and they've just kind of grown up through that, is actually really, really important to them still.
Thanks, Maisie. And actually, Lorraine, I mean, that's quite an interesting point. I mean, to what extent are the young adults, do they want dramatically different things, or actually is it more traditional than we would perhaps imagine?
From a career perspective or a benefits perspective or everything?
Discuss as interpret as Lorraine.
I think there are. I totally agree with Maisie. I think there are differences, but actually, it's it's actually quite a sensible generation. I feel they're more sensible. They do want a long-term career, and they do value security. I would absolutely agree with that, but it might not be as linear as what we're used to. So from that career planning perspective, they might have it might not just be climb the ladder. That might not be what they want. It might be more how they broaden their skill sets, for example, across a firm or an organisation. And I think from a benefits perspective, it's that well-being piece is really, really important. And on all these, what Maisie mentioned, I think I would probably put in that well-being space, and that's developed greatly post-COVID generally, but in particular with this generation. So for example, even in our office now, we have wellbeing ambassadors in every team to check in with people, make sure they're okay, to keep that positive mental health going, because at times, if the work does get stressful, there's an outlet there. So I think that's really important also.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lorraine. Now, actually, I know we're joined by Jordan this morning. Now, Jordan, I don't know if you might introduce yourself, because you'll give a slightly different perspective to some of this discussion. I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Jordan Holder. So I'm the Operational Careers Hub lead for New Anglia's Careers Hub, which is an absolute mouthful. But basically, we connect education and business for all of Suffolk's schools and colleges, and also Norfolk's as well. So about 136 institutions. So I sort of see this before they start knocking on your door asking for jobs, to be honest. And some of the themes you talk about, diversity and inclusion, we're doing a lot of work at the moment around diversity ambassadors, trying to get more reflective role models into schools and colleges, because otherwise, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And we've got very diverse communities across Norfolk and Suffolk. Also, the sustainability piece. We recently hosted an enterprise day all about sustainability in different sectors. So how to build a sustainable school with a few construction firms, develop a sustainable city, and also talk about waste recycling and pollution, and that if you just throw away a plastic bottle, it just doesn't magically go into the recycling bin sometimes. So I start to see some of these themes early on, and somebody talked about health and well-being. And I was speaking to a careers leader recently, and they said often a careers interview ends up being a session about mental health and stress, because they're worried about exams, they're worried about what life in work might look like, different pathways, and also what pathway to take. If they want to do an apprenticeship, they want to do T-levels, they want to do university, which one are they sort of being pushed into? So I do see a lot of these themes starting to emerge already with students and young people at school and college. And I think with the employers that we work with in particular, they're having to be a lot more creative around the ways they engage with students and young people in schools. You know, schools are getting a bit bored of just mock interviews and CV workshops. They want folks to come in and try innovative new ways to engage with students and young people. And that's part of our role at the Careers Hub, to try to come up with those ideas and work with the employers to make it a lot more of a seamless transition when they are engaging with the schools and colleges. So yeah, really interesting discussion so far.
Fantastic, Jordan, thank you. And actually, can you expand there a bit on, you know, what sort of work's being done at schools and colleges to prepare young adults for the world of work? I hear a lot around sometimes the expectations gap, I think, between what employers expect young adults to have done or be capable of, and then what the young adults perhaps have experienced, particularly this last 2 or 3 years.
Definitely. So we've got careers leaders who, we now have careers leaders actually getting trained around more specific areas around change management within schools and trying to engage governing bodies. And also a lot of legislation has since come in. So whether it be the career strategy at the end of 2017, or most recently the new provider access legislation, which had an update in January. But yeah, we do often see that gap. One of the main areas that we focus on is getting enterprise advisors, so volunteers from business, working on a one-to-one basis with all of our schools and colleges. So probably got about a 90% match rate across Norfolk and Suffolk. So you've got 90% plus schools engaging with employers on a day-to-day basis, supporting with careers programs, and also start to think about how you link curriculum learning with careers. The amount of times I hear students say, well, I'm never going to use algebra. Well, that's fine, but you are going to need to work out punctuation when you're drafting an email at some point. So we've had everyone from carpet fitters going to maths lessons to everything in between. So yeah, plenty's going on over the last 2 years, and that's just for us in Norfolk and Suffolk. We're part of one of 42 careers hubs across the country, with over 4,000 enterprise advisors working with us as well. So yeah, part of a much bigger picture as well, Gareth.
Yeah, fantastic. And actually, it's something I would absolutely urge all employers. I think we have a bit of a moral imperative to get involved with schools, to take the time to visit careers fairs, to go into to help young adults be able to engage with employers. And obviously it's good for us in the long run because they are our future talent pipeline. So we need to broaden horizons, we need to raise aspirations. And talking of which, I'm going to come to Steve now, actually. Steve from Form the Future. I was at a fantastic apprenticeship fair yesterday that Steve's organisation had organised. 1,000 young adults all being bussed into a single venue. So Steve, I know you've been doing a lot of work on this in sort of the last year or two, and I'd be interested in your thoughts. Oh, I can't hear you, Steve. You've come off mute, but... Still can't hear you, Steve. Tell you what, while you're just working out your tech, can I come back to Maisie? Actually,
I'll just take my headset.
Oh, here we go. All right, Steve, off you go. Can hear you now.
Headset failure, first of the day. Thank you, Gareth. So my name's Steve Thompson. I'm the CEO at Form the Future. We see about 20,000 students a year, everywhere from primary schools up to sixth formers. And we're running some interesting initial surveys out in the community at the moment with attitudes to schools, so attitudes to work and careers. So to give you a little preview, we've got a conference at the end of February coming up where we're going to be sharing these initial results. But just to give you a few ideas about what young people are thinking about in terms of their attitudes to work and careers. We've got results now from over 1,500 young people. So I'm just going to give you a quick insight into the older age groups. So these are the years 12 to 13s and what they think about work and their attitudes towards careers. And it kind of resonates with some of the stuff that's already been shared, for example. So I'm just going to give you some headlines, not going to show you some slides. You can come to our conference for the things. It's free to come. I'll stick a link in the chat. But what we find is that actually around about 32% of these older young people of the sixth formers believe that they have good access to information to help them choose their future jobs and careers, which is actually quite a low level when you think about that. Interestingly, 2/3 are worried that they're not going to get the job that they aspire to, which is quite interesting, that they can't find the information that they're looking for, and they're worried that they're not going to be able to get the job that they want to find as well. And then around 1/3 are also saying that they believe the jobs that they're looking for are actually out of reach to them. So this suggests that actually there's quite a bit of an anxiety amongst young people that the jobs that they want to do are actually out of reach. They can't find the information that they're looking for, and therefore they believe that perhaps some of these roles are actually things that they're not going to be able to genuinely do in the future. So we've asked a few more questions that form the future as to what's influencing these young people. So what are the sources of information around jobs and careers that they're getting? And I'm just going to read you out the top 10 list, just to give you an idea about who is influencing these young people. So here we go, folks. All right, you ready for this one? So at number 1, mum and dad, okay? By a clear margin as well when you go to the next one. Number 2 is Google. So they're actually using Google to search for information. Number 3 is TV shows. Number 4 is their friends. Number 5 is, and when I say friends, I don't mean Joey and Chandler, I mean they're genuine friends. Number 5 are teachers. Number 6, websites in general. Number 7, films. Number 8, YouTube. So that's the first social channel kicking in there, folks. It's quite low down the list. And then after that, we have school and other family. TikTok, we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, that doesn't appear in the sixth form age group until about number 11. So actually, that seems to be quite low down the list in terms of that being an influence around jobs and career opportunities. And that might be something to kind of think about when you think about the social channels that you might use in the future. We do a lot with employers in the Cambridge area, and so one thing just to reinforce would be the role of someone in early on in their career to act as ambassador to link with schools. We're finding to be incredibly important, and so I'd encourage any of you to use some of your early talents to engage with schools and help influence those young people. Just as the last one before I go, I used to be head of learning and development at another youth-based organisation called Student Beans. They do a piece of work every year called their Youth Trends Survey. They have a lot of information about young attitudes to work, which will kind of mirror what Lorraine's been talking about. But I'll put a link in the chat as well, just to give you some stuff there that's for the older ones, so more the kind of like 18 to 24-year-olds. But certainly what we're seeing is some real clear differences in the younger age groups, those still at school, versus what you see, for example, in the post-school age group. So if you want to find out more, please do come to our conference. I'll drop a link in the chat, and you're more than welcome to come along. That's at the end of February. So thanks for that, Gareth.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Stephen. I'm very much looking forward to the conference. Actually, I'll be coming along to that. And actually, I have seen no shortage of kind of research and reports in the last few months around this area. I think it's such a sort of hot topic for so many employers. So thanks everyone for their contribution so far. And just as we wind up this discussion, I might come back to Zoe, actually. Just any other thoughts you've got, particularly I think around, I hear a lot around young adults looking at their longer term development and career progression within firms and having clear pathways from an early stage. Have you got any thoughts on that, Zoe?
Yeah, a lot of the time I do get students asking for mentors, and not even just kind of work, more life, like mentors as such. I also speak to a lot of students who are looking for just not just the benefits of again going back to those benefits, but I guess it's that well-being that they are thinking way further in advance than I feel like we were. Maybe it's just me, but you know, that kind of what's going to happen in the future if I want to have a family, those kind of questions they're thinking right at the beginning, whereas I feel like the previous generation, that's something that they thought maybe 10 years into their career. So I feel like they're really switched on in that kind of aspect.
Thanks. I mean, I remember having a conversation with a managing partner of a firm last year who was moaning that one of their high flyers had just left the organisation and said, oh, I mean, they were going to be a future partner, possibly a future managing partner on fast track to success. And I said, did they know that? And he said, no. I've not actually talked to them about that. So I think it's making sure you have early careers conversations, particularly with the talent that you want to be, you know, bringing through within the organisation. And actually, just to finish off this first phase of our session, I might come to my own colleague Chloe, actually, because Chloe, you've been doing a survey with our student population over the last few months, which you just pull in the results together for, which we'll be distributing shortly. But Chloe, are you seeing any sort of key interest coming out of that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did our own survey to students to kind of see what they wanted from employers and what motivated them in roles. And actually, a lot of what's been spoken about in this session has been similar findings to what we found. I'll just share with you one slide. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yeah,
yeah, so we sort of found a similar thing, that although salary and bonuses are important to young people, it's actually other factors that are more important to them. For example, yeah, I mean, it's not basically, you don't have to, you can do other things as an employer to be competitive, and it's not all about money. Things that we've discussed, that you know, kegs, dogs, also flexible working, really important, similar to what I think Maisie was saying. Similarly, we found that employers shouldn't focus on one area, and it's important that they talk about lots of different things and make it clear in the recruitment process what they offer, so candidates actually know what they have, because a lot of the time employers might offer something but they don't actually express it to people. Also, we found that different groups of people want different things. Again, this has been discussed already, so employers should really look at who they're targeting specifically and maybe try and change how they word what their adverts and stuff. For example, we found that candidates, 50% of graduates actually found their current role through TikTok, which is really interesting. So perhaps if you wanted to hire a graduate, you might look at promoting that on TikTok rather than LinkedIn or something like that, but that's not the same for every group. We also found that charity work and social environmental projects that a company is involved in is really important, which has already been discussed. So yeah, I think it's very important for young people to see what employers are doing for their communities. And also mental health, again, what has already been discussed, is definitely the most popular thing, I think, because it's current. So it would be beneficial for employers to be clear about maybe the mental health initiatives they have in place. And yeah, furthermore, the role of social media, again, like TikTok, really seems to be growing in importance. A lot of people actually found their jobs through social media, and also, but still the main one is recruiters. So I think if employers want to get in front of a lot of candidates, they probably still do need to consider using recruiters. There's lots more information on this, and there's a whole report coming soon, but yeah, that's just the key points.
Fantastic, Chloe, and we very much look forward to sharing the report on that. Really fascinating points. In fact, the one that really jumped out at me was we were asking around, you know, what attracts candidates to particular organisations, either to join or to stay. And I was sort of expecting there to be sort of 2 or 3 top things that we could therefore say, these are the ones you need to focus on. But actually, I think the top 10, you could virtually separate them in terms of the percentage attraction. So it goes back to that point we were talking about earlier, actually, that you need a pretty broad, wide-ranging EVP, employer value proposition. So, well, fascinating discussion so far. Thank you very much for our speakers' input so far. And I can see we've had a fair bit going through the chat box, so thanks for input into the chat box so far.